You know the moment. It happens when you walk out of a meeting, or close the front door behind you, or hang up the phone after talking to your family. You stop. And you think, who was that person just now? Because in the meeting, you were sharp, confident, maybe even a little aggressive. Then, 5 minutes later, standing in line for coffee, you felt small, unsure, like you needed permission to exist. This isn't just a mood swing. It's not about being tired or hungry. It's deeper. It feels like you don't have oneself. You have a collection of them. And they don't recognize each other. The person you are with your oldest friend isn't the person you are with your partner. The person you are at work isn't the person you are when you're alone at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling. You've started to wonder, if there are so many versions of me, which one is real? And if none of them feel like the real you, then who is it that's watching? Let's sit with that discomfort for a moment. Think about the last time you switched contexts quickly. Maybe you were comforting a friend who was going through something painful. You were soft, gentle. You knew exactly what to say. Then, an hour later, you walked into a grocery store and someone cut in front of you. And for a split second, you felt a flash of real anger. A different person woke up. One who was ready to defend, to confront. Or think about how you act around your parents. For many people, walking into their childhood home is like walking into a time machine. You're 35 years old, but within 10 minutes, you're speaking like a teenager. Defensive. Quiet. Waiting for approval. You become the person you used to be, even if you swore you left that person behind years ago. This creates a quiet crisis of identity. You start to feel like a fraud. If you can be one person here and another person there, are you just mirroring whatever the environment demands? Are you real, or are you just a social chameleon? The mind tries to fix this by looking for consistency. You tell yourself stories to stitch the pieces together. But sometimes, the seams don't hold. You feel fragmented. Exhausted. Like you're performing, constantly. And the scariest part? You start to distrust yourself. Because if you don't know how you're going to react in a situation, if your own behavior surprises you, how can you trust yourself to handle anything? But here's what the mind doesn't tell you. This feeling of fragmentation is not a sign that you are broken. It is not a sign that you are fake. In fact, it's evidence that you are doing something incredibly complex. The brain is not built to maintain a single, rigid self. That would be inefficient. Dangerous, even. If you acted the same way at a funeral as you do at a comedy club, you wouldn't be authentic. You'd be socially blind. What you're experiencing is the natural result of a brain that is highly attuned to its environment. The problem isn't that you change. The problem is that you've been taught to believe that you shouldn't. Western culture, in particular, has sold us a myth that deep down, there is a single, stable true self waiting to be discovered. We treat the self like a diamond, hard, unchanging, pure. But psychology and neuroscience suggest something different. The self isn't a diamond. It's more like water. It takes the shape of the container it's in. It can be ice, steam, or a slow-moving river. It's still H2O. But its form changes with the temperature of the environment. You are not a fraud for changing. You are adapting. And the fact that you notice the change, that it feels uncomfortable, that you're questioning it, that means you're conscious. It means there is an observer. There is something underneath the masks. We just have to understand what it actually is. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the brain's operating system. There's a concept in psychology called self-concept clarity. It's the degree to which your beliefs about yourself are stable and internally consistent. Some people have high clarity. They know who they are, and that feeling doesn't change much depending on who's in the room. But for many people, especially those who are introspective, or sensitive, or who grew up in environments where they had to be hyper-vigilant to stay safe, clarity is lower. The boundaries between the different versions of you are porous. Here's the mechanism: context-dependent memory and behavior. Your brain doesn't just store memories as files. It stores them as states. When you walk into a room, your brain scans the environment for cues. It asks, "Where am I? Who is here? What are the rules? What version of me survived here before?" If you grew up in a house where you had to be quiet to avoid conflict, your brain stored a home self that is small and watchful. Years later, if you walk into a tense situation, your brain doesn't think, "I am an adult with agency." It accesses the state associated with that cue. It pulls up the home self file. And suddenly, you feel small again. This is also why you might feel like a completely different person when you travel alone. There are no old cues. No one knows the old you. So a new version emerges. A freer version. The metaphor here is a kaleidoscope. You have a set of colored glass pieces inside you, your traits, your memories, your fears, your desires. The tube is your consciousness. But every time the tube turns, every time the context shifts, the pieces fall into a new pattern. It's still the same pieces. But the picture looks entirely different. The mistake we make is thinking that one of those patterns is the real one. But the kaleidoscope doesn't have a real pattern. It has the capacity for all of them. So if the self is a kaleidoscope, not a diamond, how do you stop feeling like a stranger to yourself? How do you build coherence without rigidity? It's not about picking one pattern and gluing the kaleidoscope in place. That would break it. It's about understanding how the pieces fit together, so you can recognize yourself in every pattern. Here are 3 steps. Step 1, become a cartographer of your states. For 1 week, don't try to change anything. Just observe. When you feel that shift happen, when you become a different person in a different room, pause and label it. Silently say to yourself, here is the work self. Here is the family self. Here is the alone self. Why it works in the brain. This is called effective labeling. When you name an experience, you move processing from the amygdala, the reactive center, to the prefrontal cortex, the observing center. You stop being the state, and you become the observer of the state. You create a tiny gap between the experience and your identity. Here's an example. You walk into a family dinner. Within minutes, you feel yourself becoming irritable and defensive, like you're 16 again. Instead of getting lost in it, you quietly note, this is the family survival mode. That simple act of naming it creates distance. You are not the irritability. You are the one noticing the irritability. Step 2, identify the core need in the mask. For each version of yourself you've mapped, ask one question: what does this version want? What is its job? The sharp, aggressive work self might want respect. It might want to be safe from being seen as weak. The small, quiet self at the family dinner might want harmony. It might want to avoid rejection. Why it works in the brain. Every behavior, even the ones we don't like, is a strategy the brain has learned to get a need met. This is rooted in behavioral psychology and attachment theory. When you ask what does this version want, you stop judging the mask and start understanding the motive. You shift from shame to curiosity. And shame fragments identity. Curiosity integrates it. Here's an example. You notice your party self is loud and performs for laughs. You used to judge this version as fake. But when you ask what it wants, you realize it wants to feel included. It wants to lower the social tension so it can feel safe. The mask is just a strategy for connection. Step 3, build a reflective pause. Between the context and your reaction, insert a breath. When you feel the context switch happening, when you walk through a door, or hang up a call, take 2 seconds before you become whoever you're supposed to be next. Just breathe. And remind yourself, I am about to shift. I choose how. Why it works in the brain. This targets the brain's default mode network. The DMN is the part of the brain that constructs your narrative self. It's constantly telling the story of who you are. When you rush from context to context without a pause, the DMN autofills the story based on old data. By pausing, you interrupt the autopilot. You tell the DMN, hold on. Let me decide which version is needed here, instead of reacting. Here's an example. You leave a difficult work call where you had to be authoritative. You're walking into your living room where your partner is. Instead of carrying the work self through the door and being short with them, you pause in the hallway. You take one breath. You let the tension of the last role dissolve. Then you open the door. You enter as you, not as the residue of the last context. So here is the mental model to hold on to. Think of yourself as a lighthouse, not a single beam. A lighthouse stands in one place. It has a solid foundation. But inside, the lens rotates. It casts light in different directions. To the north, it shows a different face than it shows to the south. But it's the same light. You are the lighthouse. The different people you become are the beams of light, cast in different directions to navigate different waters. The work self lights up the rocks of ambition. The intimate self lights up the soft waters of connection. The alone self is the light that turns inward, illuminating the machinery of the lighthouse itself. You don't have to choose one beam. You don't have to stop the rotation to prove you are real. Your job is to know the tower. To feel its weight beneath you. To know that while the light moves, the source does not. The source is not your personality. It's not your mood. It's not your role. The source is your awareness. The one who notices the shift. The one who feels confused by the change. That awareness, that is the only part of you that never changes. So the next time you catch yourself acting differently in a different room, don't panic. Don't ask, which one is the real me? Instead, ask a quieter question. Ask, who is it that noticed the change? That observer doesn't shift. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need to be validated. It just watches. With curiosity. With patience. You are not the masks. You are not the patterns in the glass. You are the hand that holds the kaleidoscope. You are the light that makes the patterns visible. And that light is steady.